right, welcome everyone. This is Nate Johnson here with the Dad Movement Podcast. Today we have an exciting program on here. I got Norman with me.
Hey.
And we have a good friend of mine, Rick Cramblet, with us as well too. And
good afternoon.
Rick's going to be sharing with us about his life and raising children, and it's going to be good. It's going to be a little unique from our other program.
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm excited for this one.
Me too.
I looked at it on paper and I said, "Yep, I got to be here."
This is the guy.
Dre, you stay home. I got to be at this one.
No doubt. This is going to be great. So thanks for tuning in and watching, listening, however you're getting this. And we're looking forward to today and hope you like it. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nate Johnson. I am the father of 3 youngsters, married to my wife, Sarah, for 5 years. I have a daughter named Precious, a son named Boston, and a son named Champ. And I'm a proud dad. I'm my oldest daughter, as many of you may know, those of you who don't, she's 19, and she was born shortly after I was incarcerated, after I had been sent to prison. And my 2 youngest sons, one's Boston will be 2 years old in October.
Wow.
And then my son Champ will be 2 months old. So this is kind of, this whole dad thing is new to me because I was gone the first 12 years of my daughter's life. So the dad thing. So when we're doing these shows, I know I get the privilege of co-hosting, but I learn more than anything because a lot of my stuff is just theories and concepts right now.
Always.
So I get to learn a lot through this. So this is more of a teaching moment for myself and get to learn from others. Norm, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Norm, and I like that theory and concept piece because in all actuality, it's all trial and error for everyone.
Right.
There's no rule book or no playbook. You just do the best you can, right? And you learn along the way. I'm Norman Young. Like Nate said, I am a fatherhood advocate. I'm a program coordinator for a program called Dads on Deck. I help advocate for fathers and work with father engagement. I love working with fathers because I learned how to become a better father in the process, like Nate says.
Yeah.
I have a 7-year-old daughter going on 34 sometimes, but now she's only 7, handful, always keeps me in check. And my wife good. And I, we've been married 2 years. We are practicing. Hopefully we can get another one coming so we can expand on our family.
So good.
That's where I am now.
Good deal. Well, glad you joined in.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here
today. Rick, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, my name is Rick Cramblet. I am father of 3 children. But unlike you guys, my kids are all in their 30s. My youngest just turned 30, so that makes me feel
old,
interesting.
Okay, that's a better word.
I like
it. Seasoned, I guess.
There you go.
I have 3 children. My oldest is my daughter Bethany, then my son Timothy, and my youngest son is Kevin. Then I have 9 grandchildren. I've been married to my wife Nancy. It will be 43 years in February.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
So there's this is. I feel weird being here, but hopefully somebody will find something useful or interesting.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt. With those that many years under your belt, successes, the failures, all that can be poured into the next group. Just like we were talking before we went on air, we talk about discipleship, mothering and fathering, and taking those things and imparting, our very lives into other people, and where people can learn and people can understand not just the gospel but also our very lives too. That's a huge thing. Well, great. Well, let's get right into this. Rick, we partly, probably the main reason why I wanted you to come on here was to talk about this challenge, which we've even had these discussions, and obviously we're young fathers, so a lot of this is concepts and theories to us, but trying to be preventive and trying to be on the front end of things instead of getting to the end to where there's been a mess or a chaos, and then we're trying to clean something up. And one of the topics that have come up in the past, we talk about managing work life and home life, especially, like for what I do, working with men and women coming home from prison, those out of addiction. I love what I do. So it's not like going to work every day, right? So it is easy for me, if I don't set the right boundaries, it would be easy for me to be here 12 hours a day and not even think about it. Yeah. And I would be okay.
Yeah.
Until my wife started saying, hey, look, this can't be. But saying that, I love what I do. So it's easy to put in extra hours and not really think about it. Now, the challenge is we've heard a lot of stories of men who have become successful. And in that process, they've become very successful, but their home life or the family or their relationships with their children have kind of went down the tube, so to speak. Yeah. And you're successful in one area, but on the other end, it's like, should we really define that person as successful if they lost their family in the process?
What expense?
Right. And so with you doing the kind of work that you've done, being able to travel all over the world and living in different countries, that would present some different challenges. So I guess if you could do it on that level, that should definitely work for us and what we do and the many people that are listening and watching. So talk a little bit about your work history so we can have a context. So this is like, Rick worked at some building downtown and he's home at 5:00 to see the kids. But kind of give us some context so our viewers and our listeners can understand where you're coming from, and then we can get into talking about how we manage and steward those relationships within work life.
Well, I mean, I've done a lot of different kinds of jobs, but I would say I've never done a job I didn't love or enjoy. I've never done something that was torturous or I just dreaded doing it.
Right.
But in all of those things, over time, I was, I guess, privileged to have growing responsibilities and growing opportunities. I grew up, north of Muskegon in a little dinky-winky town, and I would have never expected to go anywhere or do anything, and I ended up living in Australia, traveling all over the world. I was in several aerospace companies and ran businesses that generated $100 million plus a year in sales, and it was a thing that required, because of aerospace being an international business, I did have to be gone a lot. I would plan trips and I would be gone for 14 days in a row. My wife's favorite story is I was in Kuala Lumpur in the dead of winter, and I called her from a swimming pool and I said, "Oh, it's 100 degrees here, dear." And she's like, "It's 12 below in Muskegon."
Right. Thanks,
she was unhappy that was the call. But in all of that, I would say a couple of things. One, I've tried to be very intentional that wherever I was in the world, I would, to a point we were talking about earlier, I really can maybe think of a handful of times, maybe I would say less than 10, that I didn't talk to my wife every single day, wherever I was, at least to check in, at least to let her know I loved her, to see how the kids are doing. And she had an extra burden, certainly. If I'm gone for 14 days, she had an extra burden. But being intentional about that was a big deal to the kids. I would do my best to let them know that I wasn't gone, or I wasn't gone. I was out doing my job. And then when I was home, I made sure that I turned off work. If I was home, that's when I was dad. I didn't bring home a briefcase of work and sit in the office and tell everybody to shoo. And again, I would credit my wife being really on board with that when I was home, I was available to the kids. I was available to be dad when I was home. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like that simple concept right there, like when you're home, be present.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know there's been times where I could be at home sitting on the couch and I'm scrolling through Facebook.
Yeah.
Right? And then either I'll get hit by Sarah or it'll and I've gotten a lot better. Now when I go home, I turn the phone off and I'll check it periodically for work. If something happens that I have to be available for. But I felt convicted. Like I'm sitting here, I should be. I've been at work all day, and here I am trying to. I don't want to say relax, but just doing mindless things when I should be interacting with my sons and my daughter. Right?
No.
So it's like that could be. But how much of that is a challenge for so many men?
It is,
especially now. I mean, working at home, people who are working remotely. You're working in the living room while your children in the other room, and you try to do 8 hours there, but you're constantly stopping, and then you're like, all right, well, I'll just do it a little later. I'll spend some time with them. And then you find yourself just on your laptop all day long. I've been doing it till 1 and 2 in the morning sometimes, just because I haven't had strict boundaries. And it's so important, like you said, that you're able to turn it off, because it's not fair to your children and your family to just get what's left of work, As much time as you put in work, you have to put within family as well. Now, a question is too, within your story, I see that you started working with the aerospace company. Now, was that early on having children? Is that from the day one when you met your wife, you were working there, and then you had kids? Okay, or how did that happen?
No,
and then when it did happen, when did you start to create those boundaries?
Well, I worked at a farm store, and I worked at a camera shop, and I worked in retail, and I loaded trucks. I've done things that weren't so exciting as traveling the world. And then I would say God's given me the opportunity to do these other things. So we had our kids when I was still working in heating and air conditioning wholesale business. So, and even there, I think I was a workaholic-ish person. I've always been focused on trying to push myself to be the best at whatever it was I was doing. And my wife would remind me of my obligations. I think men are naturally consumed by their work, or we allow ourselves to be consumed if we're not careful. So it was in those times I started to learn how to better put the boundaries up and say, hey, when I'm at work, I'm at work, but when I'm at home, I'm not at work. And then as I started to travel, that had to be something I became even more adept at. And, it was before FaceTime, or most of it was. There wasn't FaceTime when my kids were little. So it would be to, be very purposeful about making a phone call when they were still awake, which might have been inconvenient if you're in Europe. Yeah. If you're going to call them at 6:00 at night, it's midnight. But then you figure that out and you make arrangements to do that. And things like, I would tell my employees, if you need me outside of work, you're going to have to call me. Don't send me an email and don't send me a text. I'm not going to look at those. And when you put that kind of a boundary up, people are like, oh, well, that's a different level of urgency when you say, you've got to call me, and I'll answer my phone if you call me, but I'm not going to get a text, and I'm not looking at my email, not when I'm off the clock.
Right.
I like that. I'm writing that one down. That was a really good one.
Yeah, because I don't do that one.
No.
You'll be surprised how many people don't call you.
Absolutely.
Don't call you.
No, it's something I definitely need to implement that.
Absolutely. No emails, no texts.
Nope.
Call me if you need me.
Yep, after 5.
It better be important.
After 5, yeah, because they're going to, yeah.
Yeah, because you're going to shut them down if you're like, what'd you call me for that?
Yeah.
Now, I'm sorry, Nate, I'm just so intrigued.
Go ahead.
Okay, so creating boundaries and things like that. Now, what were some, working outside of the home and being gone and traveling so much, what were some non-negotiables, I think, when it came to like taking the position? Were there like things that you had to create boundaries even within like your employer and supervisor? Like, were there things like, hey, I can't travel more than 6 months straight out the year?
That's a
Or
good
what are
question.
some things that you had to set boundaries within your employer?
Yeah, I was not available until the kids were older. In fact, I lived in Australia, but my kids were two of the three were graduated from high school and in college,
Okay.
and then the third one had just left to go be a musician. That's a whole nother story. But anyways, we let him do that. He was a traveling musician, so that's when I felt like I could take a position and move to Australia and come back and forth. And my wife came back and forth. I never traveled more than 2 weeks at a time, simply because it would be unfair to my wife and it would disengage me from my kids too much. And the other thing was I couldn't, like, I wanted to have responsibilities at our church. Like, I taught adult classes and I had people that I was mentoring. And if you take more than 2 weeks off, you get to, you can't hold those responsibilities. So that was the limit, and it was based on the things I wanted to do with my children, of course, and then any other thing you were going to do of importance in your community or in your church. You can't do it if you're gone all the time.
Right.
And so it was career limiting to some extent. And I would tell people, I see a lot of ambitious people, and I would tell them all the same thing. Your career, your employer, they will take from you whatever you let them.
Oh.
They will squeeze you out, because that's not their job is not to set your boundaries. Your job is to set your boundaries.
I like that.
Right.
And they will extract from you whatever you're letting them do, and whatever's left, well, hey, it's on you.
Yeah.
And I know people don't like to hear that.
It's the truth, though.
It's the truth. It is the truth. So we have to protect our families. We have to protect our children and our relationships by setting those boundaries, because our employer will not do it. And for an ambitious person, that's when you've got to be real intentional.
Absolutely.
So
Because that's turning down things. Sometimes it's turning down a gig that may offer more money at a time, or side jobs and things like that.
it is.
You have to have that discipline to be able to say no and let that be a complete sentence, right?
Exactly.
And not wavering,
It's true.
And I really like how you said your consistency within your communication of checking in every day, no matter what. And I think that's very important too. I think in order to do something like that, to work outside the home and be gone a good amount of time, you have to have strong communication. I mean, it's already hard to be a father when you're just working a 9 to 5 and you're coming home every day, and how much communication takes effect even in that piece. But to be outside the home, I can only imagine of what that good communication did for your family and your marriage.
So true. I know one of the boundary settings that my wife and I have agreed on, because I'll get invites to do public speaking, go talk at different places. So one, and this is something I've shared with you, Norm, and one of some of our conversations was no more than 2 nights out of the week can I do it. So if I already accept 2, if the third or fourth one come, it's automatic no, unless it's some extraordinary type of event where I feel like it's necessary, but she makes the final call. I say, hey, look, this opportunity come up, but if she says no, then no matter what it is, it's no. You know what I mean? But other than that, because if not, it would be so easy. Because there's been times where it seemed like 5 different speaking engagements came all in 1 week, all on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I would have been gone from 7, 8 o'clock in the morning till 10, 11 o'clock at night. But think of the strain that would have on a
And it's not just money stuff.
Right.
I mean, some of the churches I've been in, they ring you out just the same way, and they don't mean to do it. But
Right.
you could serve on a committee and be on a board and do a thing and do another thing and teach a class and show up at a men's thing, and then you're like, wow, I may have set a boundary at work, but I thought, well, these are good things.
Right.
But anything that keeps you out of the game with your kids, you got to be careful.
I like that. I guess another question that I asked that comes up a lot in our fatherhood group that we host on Monday nights is this theory of a perfect balance, right? Is there such thing as a perfect balance?
No.
Things being even.
No, I mean, before I did this, I talked to all three of my kids in the last couple of days, and I said, hey, I'm going to do this podcast, and I just want you to be straight with me. Where did I mess up? And where do you think I did okay? Where do you think I messed up? And they all three said, you were gone a lot. You were gone a lot. But we knew that when you were there, you were engaged and you were involved in this. And I sought that balance. I mean, I thought, yeah, there's some perfect balance, but I think it goes with seasons. And so there's times when you're going to be gone more, you're getting your education. I mean, I got my degree while I was working and traveling the world, and I wrote my thesis on an airplane.
Wow.
Well, blah, 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 all of that stuff. Well, that's fine, but then there were times when I could be home and be engaged, for long periods of time. So I think you just have to give up that idea there's some perfect balance, and yet strive to be, they talk about getting in the flow where you sort of feel like, oh, I've really got this. Get in the flow with your kids, not just your job. Get in the flow where you're like, this feels right, this feels good. I'm giving them enough, and they'll tell you. They will. You'll see it. You'll see them flourish, and that's what you're hoping for. So.
Well, I'm fully convinced it's a myth. There is no perfect balance.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Rick, looking back over 42 years of marriage and 30-something years of having children, and you had some up-and-coming fathers like ourselves with young children, what would be some things that you probably had to learn the hard way or missed the mark on or was really successful at, and you're saying, hey, if you guys give attention to these 2 or 3 things or just this one thing, what advice would you give us in our audience to the young fathers out there saying, hey, here's some stuff you should really give your attention to? What would you tell us?
Well, I've sort of tried to keep journals. The whole time I've got stacks of them, and I my constant thing. I think I said this to you, Nate, before. When I read my journals, it's a constant me recognizing my weakness, my failure. That seems to be the theme in it. Is like, I've done this and I want to do better. I want to keep going. I would say the most important thing to me when I look at my life and the life of others is just to say, you know what, being a dad is a worthy goal. Being a good dad, it's a worthy goal. We become what we aim at, right? When we aim at something, it focuses our attention, it focuses our resources. So I would say, the first thing you got to say is, if you're a dad, is like, I want to be a great dad. And I want to focus myself on that. I want to be a student. I've read a lot of books on being a parent, and if you can get one little thing, you go, oh, I could use that with my son, or I could use that with my daughter, because that would fit them. If you can learn one more thing, I mean, that to me is a big deal. But the other thing I would say is, you can't beat yourself up. You just have to keep getting up. My daughter's said, when I was talking to her, she said one of the most powerful memories she had was when I messed up and I apologized. And she said, I realized I didn't have to be perfect because you aren't perfect and you owned not being perfect. So, in our failure and our imperfection, we just keep getting up and we keep offering ourselves to our kids.
That's so good. You know, the practical side, you going back to what we were talking about before we went on air, it's like those simple things, especially with those of us who were, you know, in our younger years, we didn't have dads in the home. So there wasn't someone to look at, someone to imitate until we found our own way in it. You know, no frame of reference to go off of. And we're attempting to do marriage and raise children without having a very healthy example. And so those examples are, just the fact of the consistency, staying with it, right? Just the power of consistency, staying with it. If you blow it, okay, get back up, dust yourself off, let's keep moving again. But I think one of the things is that I think is very important, you didn't actually say the word, but you referred to being intentional, right? And being a parent. Let's be intentional. When I'm present, remain present. Stay present with your children. And like on the times when you're home and you're with them, were you intentional about doing vacations and going and doing things that were fun and staying intentional in that capacity?
Yeah. And, you know, when I was home, I would get my kids up, my boys especially, and we'd have devotions in the morning. Yeah. And one of my sons said, he goes, "How did you tolerate how horrible we were at that? How did you?" He goes, "But you know," he goes, "that makes me want to try to do that in my life today." Wow. You know, the fact that it was not perfect, you know, that's the thing. Take aim. Even if it's not perfect aim, it's better than no aim. True. So, you know, being intentional, even if we fail, is better than being, well, whatever happens, happens. Yeah. And you know, I think I've said this to you before, Nate. I'd say to any dad, just read the book of Proverbs. Read it every day. Read the chapter for the day. There's 31 chapters. There's 31 days in a month, the longest month. It's all about wisdom. Yeah. If there's one thing I tried to help my kids understand is wisdom has a moral understanding element to it, right? It's not just how smart you are, it's how wise you are at applying truth. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you can never exhaust the book of Proverbs when you're a dad. Never. It's the best. So if you don't get anything else out, go grab the book of Proverbs. Tomorrow I'll read chapter 10. And away you go. Yeah,
I love it.
So good. Yeah, it's good stuff. The concepts and the truths and reality and the wisdom that's contained there in Proverbs is huge. So.
Oh yeah, I love Proverbs. Definitely one of my favorite books of the Bible.
No doubt.
So yeah, man, I learned so much throughout these 30 minutes.
This is good.
I needed to hear this. I needed this.
Yeah.
You know, it's challenging me. It's convicting me out of love just to make sure that I'm setting those boundaries again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not only within my family, but within my employer too. Yeah. You know, it's finding that balance. Yeah, you want to move up within your career. You want to, you know, continue to build in your community and to help fathers and do things like that. But I think at the end of the day, I heard that if you really want to know the life of a man and who the man truly is, ask his wife and his children. And it all starts within the home. So to make sure that you are making them the priority, because they're a gift from God, and to take care of that and being wise steward over our families is so important, and to give them that time that they deserve. So it's definitely having me going back to the drawing boards and looking at how I need to be better at creating boundaries. So I am so thankful for this message.
Yeah, and like Rick said, remaining a student, right?
That's it.
Never getting to a place where you feel like you've arrived. You got to figure it out.
Oh, man.
None of it. I've not arrived.
Right. So
Still working.
It's remaining and being a student, reading the books, and making sure that you have the right mentors in your life that have they've done it fairly well. And
if you screw up, tell your kids, hey, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have lost my temper. I should have not, you know, let them know part of life is making mistakes and then getting back up, because that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing about that, you know, when we go and clean up our mess and apologizing and that, it's really a teaching moment for them,
Yes.
because when they get older,
That's it.
well, they're going to do the same thing. Well, how do you handle these situations?
Yeah.
Well, I remember my dad would come back and apologize. I remember how it made me feel,
Yes.
right? And I remember I just felt like, okay, I'm not angry, I'm not bitter, and I think Dad did it the right way. And it's because children at that time, they're kind of like wet cement, right? We're putting these impressions on them.
Yeah.
And when they get older and that cement begins to harden, they're going to imitate the example that we set before them. Kind of like what you said, we become what we continuously gaze upon. So if I have an aim and that's what I'm constantly giving my attention to, that's going to be it's powerful. I think someone said one time, people will remember about 5% of what you say, but they'll never forget about how you made them feel, right?
Right.
And I think with the children, that's going to be it. Like was there a sense that they felt loved,
Yes.
right? With the men and women that we work with, coming out of incarceration, a lot of them they could talk about some specific incidences, but the overall conversation is, I just didn't feel loved at home, right? It comes back to that feeling piece there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it's huge, and being able to set the example and teaching our children how to clean stuff up. You know what I mean? If you blow it big time, it's time to clean it up, right?
None of us is perfect.
Exactly.
Never too late. It's never too late.
Exactly. Good stuff. Well, Rick, as we wind up, is there last thought, final thought, what would you want to leave us with?
Well, I've got a quote. It was attributed to Frederick Douglass, although that's could be apocryphal. But he said it's easier to build strong children than to fix broken men.
Amen.
And that's probably nothing new. But it is much easier for us to help our kids be successful than it is to pick up that mess.
Yeah.
If we can help them get a good start, it's the most important thing God's put us on earth to do.
Yes.
So important in the roles that fathers play in society, right?
Yeah.
When we look at incarceration rates,
Yeah.
teen suicides, teen dropout rates, the list could go on and on with
Absolutely.
negative stats of what can potentially transpire in an individual's life when they don't have a father
Yeah.
in the home. And not just in the home. I mean, I think sometimes just a dad just being there could accomplish something. Just being
Oh,
present,
that's
right?
better than
You
nothing.
probably don't even have to do anything.
Yeah.
Just being present will
Showing up.
accomplish some things.
Showing up.
But then you actually live intentionally.
Yeah.
The potential of producing more fruit or better fruit, so to speak, right? And our children it'll be amazing. And it's just that we look at all the ills in society, the roles and the impacts that fathers can have literally could change the course of history for this nation, right? And until individuals' hearts
Yeah.
get fixed,
Yeah.
and then we take that home
Yeah.
and we pour that into our children, into our family life, we'll never be able to get to a place to where we'll change the world in a sense, especially with all the stuff going on right now in the world. Until the hearts change, until the families change, we're going to reap what we sow.
I think you kind of hit on it too. Like, I think God was very intentional of what relationship we have with him, and him being our heavenly Father, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that transcends here on earth of why God created us to be fathers and lead. Like, it is such an important piece, and you just see the attack by the enemy on fathers within incarcerations and fathers not being home, because he knows how important that role is, right? But I know doing things like this, talking to our fathers, encouraging our fathers, having these hard conversations sometimes, but to continue to build our fathers up, that's how we get our communities back. That's how we repair broken men. That's how we better our future. It starts with leading our households and becoming better fathers.
That's so true.
So
true.
Amen.
Rick, we appreciate you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
Thanks
joining
for
us and
having me.
coming on
Appreciate
today.
it.
We appreciate the insights and the things that you shared. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Again, this is Nate Johnson, and we got the Norman Young and then Mr. Cramblet, Rick Cramblet, with us today, sharing from his experience of being a dad and So we're thankful for that. Thanks for tuning in or watching, however you are watching this or listening to it, whatever. Hey, thank you. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.